In the last video on this channel, I built my bench top router table, and in this one, I'm going to be building the stand. Now, there are a number of different ways I could do this. The stand itself is not that big of a deal. All it needs to do is hold the router table up, and I also want to be able to put a small shop vac inside for dust collection that only works with the router table, so it doesn't have to be overly complex. I'm going to be building the bulk of it out of 1/2-inch plywood, and because my shop is not huge, I'm going to cut the sheet in half outdoors, and then I'm going to bring each half in, and I'm just going to cut that down to the final width on my table saw. Now, I drew up a bit of a plan before I got started on this, so I already know the sizes of all the parts, and I'm just going to cut those to length using my crosscut jig at the end of my table saw. Now that was the two side panels, and they're 23.5 inches wide, but the top and bottom are not as wide as that, so I'm going to cut them down before I cut them to length. And since the sheet is shorter now, I can do that on a table saw as well. I need to do a little bit more work on the side panels before I can start assembly, and here I'm laying out what will be a recess for the wheel that the stand will roll on. I'm going to save these pieces that I'm cutting out here because I'm actually going to make the wheels from those. And the side panels also have an integral front foot, I guess you could say. And to do that, I'm going to cut the panel 3/4 of an inch shorter on the table saw again. I'm going to stop most of the way through though and finish it with the jigsaw. With that done, I can start on assembly, and here I'm just clamping one of the side panels to the side of my table saw to hold it while I fasten the top. And to do that, I'm just using polyurethane construction adhesive, and I'm driving in a few 1 3/4 inch brads. Occasionally this can happen if your aim is off, and that's why you want to make sure your fingers are well out of the line of fire before you actually drive the nail. And since this is just a shop project, it's not that big of a deal. Next, I can fasten the bottom panel in exactly the same way. And you'll notice that it's flush with that cut that I made that's further up, so that the front legs actually stick down. Now I'm just going to put a couple of clamps on there to pull the sides in tight and let the glue set for a little while I cut the front and back panel. And once again, I'm going to use my crosscut track on my table saw here. But this time I'm just going to cut the panel in half and finish making the cuts on the table saw. Before I attach the back panel, I need to get these backer blocks in, and this is what I'm going to mount the wheels on. In particular, the axle. So I've drilled a 1/4 inch hole, and now I'm just going to glue and nail it in place. And while I'm at it, I should make the wheels as well. Like I said, I'm going to use the pieces that I already cut out to do that. And I've used my compact compass to draw the circle on here, and I'm going to cut it out on the bandsaw. And once again, I'll bring it to the drill press and drill the 1/4 inch axle hole. Now I can attach the wheels, and to be honest, this is something that I really wish I had to put a little bit more thought into and a little bit more planning, because what I really wanted to have happen was to have these wheels as flush to the side as possible and not stick out too far, mainly so they wouldn't snag on anything when I'm pulling it around. But I guess I'm going to have to make do with them sticking out just a little bit. Before I put the back panel on, I'm going to install some cleats. And what these will do is they'll stiffen things up, of course, and they'll also give me a place to screw in the panel. I want to be able to remove this panel just in case I need to get in there. I had time to think about the wheel situation, and I came up with a better solution and a way for them to be in tighter to the body like I wanted. And that was to replace the nut that was in between the wheel and the body with a T-nut that's pressed in, and that really cut down on the thickness. So this cabinet is completely enclosed and it will have a shop vac inside, and I need some place for the exhaust from the shop vac to go. And I initially thought that I could maybe send it back up through the router table to disturb the air inside there. But then I thought that doing that would cause a problem, as in there wouldn't be enough negative pressure inside the router table itself for the dust collection to the fence to work. The air actually has to pull in through that hole in the top that links up with the fence. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill 2 exhaust ports in the bottom of the cabinet. There's enough space there between the bottom and the floor, and I figure that's the best place for the air to go. And while the cabinet was still upside down, I figured it was a good time to do some sanding on there, mainly just to remove the dry glue that is squeezed out. Of course, this is the bottom of the cabinet and will never be seen again after this video. Next step is to take care of the front panel. And originally for that, I was just going to make a door that's hinged, and that would probably be the most simple way. But I've come up with a different idea that's kind of interesting. But the first thing that I need to do is make a face frame for this cabinet from solid wood. And that does a couple things. First of all, it works with this door idea that I have. And second, it'll make the front of the cabinet here look more finished, and it'll also be a little bit more durable. So I'm cutting the parts for this from solid maple. And once again, I'm just going to use polyurethane construction adhesive to fasten them to the edge of the plywood and fire in a few brads to hold it while the glue dries. Okay, with the trim on the front there, I can try the door idea. And basically the way this is going to work is very similar to the way, say, a patio door works, in that you'd have to lift it up to lift it out of the track. But in this case, you'd actually have to push it down to get it out. And to accomplish that, I've got pieces of a sanding sponge here. I'm going to put in the bottom and see if they have the right amount of tension, and just try the panel in there and see how it goes. The beauty of this is, of course, that I can adjust the tension by making the blocks of sanding sponge smaller or bigger as I need to. And I think that looks pretty good right there. What I need to do next is add some stops for the front panel so that it doesn't go all the way in. And I'm just going to put those on the side. And then I need to make a handle for this door. And the handle does 2 things. First, it allows you to grab the handle and pull the stand out of the alcove where I'm going to put it. And it also allows you to remove the door. And I'm just going to make that out of another piece of maple and mount it on the front up higher on the panel by driving screws in through the back. And this gives me the opportunity to try out the new router table to round over the edges. I gave the stand 2 coats of water-based polyurethane, and I left that to dry overnight. And now I'm getting ready to put the vacuum inside, and I've already done some figuring here where the inlet needs to be that goes through the top of the stand. And I decided that the best place for that is directly below the router. That way there's no possibility of chips piling up directly below the router motor, so that they won't be drawn into the machine. The vacuum I'm going to use for this is a smaller one, but I think it has more than enough capacity to work with this. And I made the stand specifically for this vacuum so that it just fits inside there, basically from top to bottom. For the inlet, I'm going to drill a hole through the top of the stand that's very close to the diameter of the hose that comes from the vacuum. And for the power cord, I'm going to drill a 3/8 inch hole to begin with. And then right beside that, I'm going to drill a 1-inch hole, and that'll allow me to fish the cord up through. And then once it's through, I can push the cord over into the 3/8 inch hole and then cover the larger opening with a patch that I'm just going to screw in place. And what the patch does is it just covers that hole so there won't be a major leak between the inside of the router table and the inside of the stand. Now that the prep work is done, I can put the router table on top of the stand and plug the shop vac into the cord that I have there for that. and set it down in place. To fasten this to the stand, I'm just going to use 4 1.5-inch screws. Just drill the pilot holes and drive those in. And then the last thing to do is put the vacuum inside the stand, and then I can put the front panel on, plug the router table in, and give it a try. And then after I'm finished using it, I can roll it into the bay that I have here in my miter saw station, especially for this.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire!